here a little bit more. I'll give you a good. Whew. Yeah, you get that bucket. Hey, what is up, Patrick? I'm jumping on live to kind of tell a little bit of a story about what happened with Tony, and I'm kind of glad it worked out the way it did. So I'm gonna get a few more people in here and we'll get into it. Look at that guy. What a character, but brilliant coloration. I mean, he just looks stunning. Oop, what did I do? Did that turn everything green? What the heck? Look at this guy. Got that big mouth open. Just being a typical snapper. Just looking around. Always looking. They actually have really sharp eyesight. These guys can be up for air and you can be 50 to 100 yards away and they'll spot you and just dip under the water as quick as they can. Ugh. All right, so kind of a slow day on YouTube Live, but we'll get into it in a second. Got Tony walking around. Got a pretty interesting story about how it affected things here at the house. Yours is 10 pounds, so Tony is right around 50. He's all 2 to 45 in years past, and then I noticed as soon as his head started to really heal up well, his carapace growth and overall weight started picking back up. So he had that injury, and I think it stunted his growth because he's not very big. I was telling my buddy yesterday that we're talking about his size and kind of what happened, and we're talking about, oh, he's basically the size of like a New England common snapper. So he's like the size of a huge common snapper, but for an alligator snapper, he's pretty small. So, you know, this size, I mean, a 10 pounder in captivity could be this size, and maybe another 10 years, he'd be pretty close to this. This is about, I want to say like a 20 something inch midline down the middle of the carapace length. I'm used to doing metric when we measure these, so it's hard for me to convert it to inches off the top of my head anyway. But yeah, you know, they grow slowly, a lot slower than the common snappers, so it's a lot harder to guesstimate growth on them. I get some, you know, like I had a video recently, and one of the juveniles in my survey through the juvenile stage was 3.5 pounds in April, and then, you know, a couple weeks ago when we caught him, he's 5 pounds, that's amazing. You know, that's almost doubling in weight, and probably by the time the season closes out, that turtle might, so, you know, he might have doubled his weight in a year, which is pretty wild. Pretty cool stuff. All right, so we're kind of getting some more people in here. I'm also going to leave this posted up so people can watch it later. So yeah, let's talk about what's been going on. So I had a really busy August in terms of traveling, filming videos, and also just work. So I'm also a photographer, and one of my jobs as a photographer is I shoot events and weddings and stuff like that. And I'd actually been on a photography work trip to Charlotte, North Carolina with the Robinson Business College. And so I was gone for a couple days, and before I left, I would say a couple days before I left, I dipped my phone into his pond, which was covered in plants, so you couldn't even see him from the surface. I used to just dip water shot and just kind of see where he's at in there. So I had done that a couple days before I left, and then the day, I want to say maybe the night before I left, I put some fish in there. And then when I came back from Charlotte, I noticed there was like a fish floating on the surface. Oh my God, he's gonna chase me. I'm being chased. And on the surface that had gone uneaten, and that just seemed, kind of odd. And then it was like another day later, I was like, okay, I'm gonna put some more fish in there. And that was on the 20th, I think, and completely uneaten. And so it was the next day, I was like, okay, this is all gone uneaten. I need to look and find him. I started looking at his pond. I don't see him anywhere, which isn't completely unusual because, that has happened before, and he's actually been in there. He can wedge himself into places in that pond where it looks like it's totally empty, and then, you move a log or you look under the ledge and he'll actually turn himself like sideways or vertical and get places where you can't even see him. So I was just kind of mostly couldn't find him. Started walking around the yard. Sometimes he does get out, and he kind of has normal places he goes to. There's like a pond over in the corner that it's like a 300-gallon stock tank basically in the ground, and sometimes he goes and gets in that. Sometimes he goes kind of along the back fence. There's actually a depression over in that corner over there where I used to have a Gulf Coast box turtle enclosure. It gathers water. Sometimes he ends up in the aquascape stream over there. Wasn't in any of those places. And so I was starting to freak out, and I was walking the fence and I found like a spot that maybe he could have gotten out, but it was still weird because I have box turtles that free roam this yard. I have some tortoises that free roam this yard, and none of them got out. And I was just bugging. And I took my other male, first I put a female in there to see if if he was in there and I wasn't seeing him, he would definitely come out for a female. Put her in there, no reaction. Then I put Al, my other male, in there because that'll initiate a territorial reaction. Put Al in there, no reaction. So I basically lost 4 or 5 nights just going out and looking for him, and going out at night and, seeing there is a creek in the neighborhood. So I've gone and walked creeks. I've gone during the day and walked creeks to see if I could find him. My buddy Christian came out with me for one of them. Even saw a common snapper go up under a bank, and we were trying to poke and see if we could see if there's an alligator snapper in there. And I was kind of getting to the point where I'd lost hope. I wasn't really going to say anything on social media yet or say anything to anybody yet because it was still within a window where I knew I had a chance to find him. And so I was really hoping he wasn't stolen, which would be pretty hard for somebody to do because, it's hard for me to find him in his enclosure most of the time. So last night I went out and I just was like on a mission, and I decided, I was like, okay, I am going to find him. And sure enough, I walked a section through basically between 2 houses. The creek was, literally he's this wide. The creek was maybe that wide. He took up most of it. It was shallow. And if you look, see, there's just mud. Look at that. That's still area of just thick mud. And I knew when I kept finding these holes in this mud, and it was like he had been buried in there and just kind of been sitting, and then moved, and then sat and moved, probably over the, each day or each night had kind of been just sitting in the same place. And sure enough, I would take a few more steps, boom, my flashlight. I literally walked up on him like this. So I was kind of walking downstream. I walked up, and then I just saw this. He was right out in front of me. I was stunned because I had almost gotten to the point where I thought he was gone. Flashlight hit him like this, pulled him up onto the bank. And honestly, it was such an emotional thing having him missing that it was, just being able to find him again. I just sat with him for probably 10 minutes just on the bank, just like I found him. I was so relieved. I was so worried about it. My biggest fear was that somebody in my neighborhood, I'm in the South, somebody would find him and eat him, or, somebody shot him in the head. That's how I originally got him. So I was worried that somebody was just out of sheer ignorance and meanness just going to kill him. So I was really just not a very happy life until I found him, and then I did. And so now I have to address what had happened. How did he get out? And so first off, I think the fence around his pond obviously needs to be higher. I think the design of it, I think he's able to just climb out of it too easily. And then another issue I ran into is my neighbor that lives back here he's had trees fall on my fence back here so many times that the whole thing is just completely wonky and bent. And he said he was gonna take care of it for me, and all he really ended up doing was taking down trees in his backyard, and my fence is still wonky. And so I think what had happened was, we'll kind of walk over here, is I think he pulled a callidra, like he did something a common snapper would do. And it looks like, let's get back here. It looks like he climbed this corner back here. So he had followed along the back edge of the fence. You can see the ground is all pushed away. Where he had tried to stand up, right there is where the tail had pushed off the ground. You can see the mud on the fence. You can see mud there. You can see mud there. And his weight had actually pushed these out of here. He had gone up here. There's mud on this part of the fence. Flopped over, fell onto that, and then worked this until he found a way out of that fence. And then he was in a creek beyond this person's yard. And so I think that's how he gotten out. So obviously I have to fix that part of my fence. I think maybe I'll even like wall off this section so it's not even accessible. But it really, the thing is going to be just making sure that, whether he's in a pond or, maybe since I'm going to go out of the country for a month, maybe he'll spend just the rest of the year in a stock tank, and we'll revisit the pond in the spring. I've done that before. But you can see, here's the pond over here. It's just not high enough. And then you can see right here, there's the claw marks where he clawed his way out and then made his way back through there. So it's going to be rebuilding the fence, using better materials. It's funny because he, really typically does these things when we get a major storm, which mirrors their natural behavior. Males will go up into floodplains during heavy rains. They're going to look for more food. They're going to look for mates. And so that's, natural behavior. And that's what he was trying to do, but, inadvertently put himself in danger, not really knowing it. And another thing I've seen that happens is I've had turtles get out of the yard before. When I had a groundhog digging holes under the fence, a lot of times they'll get out and then they'll try to get back in the yard, and I'll find them along my fence trying to get back. So turtles like to get out, they like to explore, and then a lot of times they'll try to come back. So, all right, I'm gonna jump into the comments real quick now that I've run my mouth. Let's see. So thanks, Patrick. Yeah, I'm so glad I found him. How am I doing today? I'm relieved. I was not doing good the last few days. I think I wasn't really talking to people, and I was just super sad, super bummed. Yes, this is a snapping turtle. This is an alligator snapper. Yeah, so I think we're gonna convert that wood around the pond into a solid wall. I don't know if I'm gonna maybe use some of that like corrugated metal, or do that like backwards hanging thing so that he can't get out. I think also if it's a solid wall, that really kind of discourages them, because they're not actually seeing something on the other side that they can try and get through. So yeah, but you can see he's covered in mud from the place where he was at. And it's funny because I found some pieces of musk turtle, and I couldn't tell if they were old or new or what had happened. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, oh man, what if he got in here and he had been eating stink pots, and then literally, maybe 5 minutes later walked up on him, and the way the mud is built up on his shell, he had sunk himself probably up to about the keels in the mud and just waited for something to walk by, just using that ambush position. So yeah, he did the snapping turtle thing. So, but yeah, so it was a really emotional thing for me. I was upset. I was not happy, and it's also kind of thing, because I didn't want to have to like say, hey, I'm missing a keystone member of my backyard. Like I was really struggling with it, because I know he's here. I know I can find him. He's an alligator snapper. He's going to go find a water source. He's not going to go very far. So I knew that, there was only one small creek in the area. And so I knew if I just basically beat the brakes off of looking in that creek, that that was going to be my best chance to find him, and I'm just glad it worked out. And you can see they can walk around on land, but they're not as good at it as a common snapper. And then when you get males bigger than this, they really struggle to walk around on land. So for right now, he's going to be in a stock tank. I have like this 600 right here, so he'll probably go into that. Last night I had him in a 300. So we're going to figure out something better. I think I'm going to have to create like a lid over this one. Right now this one's just got live bearing fish in it. But, you know, build a lid on this one, and then we'll just put him in here until next spring. He'll be fine. He's overwintered in this thing for years. Anytime the pond's been not working. So yeah, I'm not too worried about it. I always like to try and get them bigger when I can, but it doesn't always work out that way. And then, you know, when something like this happens, you just have to adapt. So yeah, in the winters, this will ice over, but it'll still be, you know, water underneath. And then I run a pump, so the water's actually moving in here. So it really takes it to be really, really cold for this to freeze, but they're fine. I mean, they do better in cold than they do in hot. When they get hot, they'll and they get kind of weird and lethargic. In the winter, no problems whatsoever, especially where I'm at. I'm in Atlanta, so it's not like I have like a crazy winter. But yeah, man, it's quite a relief. Here's a Gulf Coast box turtle. Hey, buddy, how are you doing? That's kind of a more eastern looking. Do I know a Vagrant Holiday? I don't know what Vagrant Holiday is. Sounds like a band or like a good name for a skate video. Let's see, we got another couple. So yeah, guys, that's what I got. Just giving you an update on what happened with Tony and how it's going to affect probably the next couple months, because I'm going to be leaving for Thailand at the end of October, and I'll be back at the end of November. So before I leave, I've got to get all of this stuff situated, get everybody secure, and make sure that everything is good with all the animals. So that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's what's going on. So thank you guys for jumping on. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.